Hi guys, welcome to this new series. We are going to start the year off with a few videos about watercolor. Watercolor is such a beautiful medium. It is so radiant and luminous, and I wanted to kind of cover the broad spectrum of all the pillars that create a watercolor process. It's quite difficult, so I wanted to go through and talk through a few of these techniques today and show you kind of what I've been working on in the new year. So the little pile with the ribbon on it that I put to the side, that was how I started last year, kind of my sketchbook practice. And then this year I've started the same. So this beautiful handmade cotton paper from the Amalfi coast, I will link where I get it from. And I started again with just a few of these sketches, places where we go on our walk and kind of views I can see. I've been really interested in these kind of nocturnes and also the blue hours. So after sunset, you get this kind of beautiful, magical time when everything is kind of powdered in this sort of rich blue. And then depending on the moonlight, the way the shadows go of a night is really also interesting. These are the deep indigos with sort of these Prussian greens and blues, or the kind of more earthy colours. So yeah, that has been really interesting to kind of think through. And these started out as they were going to be sort of under paintings, and I was going to work on top of them, but I actually just really liked them in this very pale way. So I just did a little bit of sort of glazing on top of those. And then I'm just showing you from this pile from last year. I always do the cover page last, but these were the two that I started the year off with last year. And again, very quick sketches, but I'm thinking through kind of compositionally different challenges that watercolor can present, different ways to work through that. Also like colors and how the colors affecting the atmosphere, the light or the kind of absence of light, and how that kind of creates these different beautiful colors. It's really strange to be able to look at the same thing and see so many variations. So these were ones I did last sort of spring summer. So this was spring where the trees were more green gold, and then summer is where the kind of dark green lush foliage comes in. And then this one also from last year where it was kind of a storm was coming in. And I want to show you through these because we're going to talk about two of the foundational techniques for watercolor today and kind of look at different ways to use them, why they may work, why they may not work. I want to show you through some paintings as well to hopefully give you an idea of how these different techniques can look or can work. So this one here was a wet on wet underpainting, and then I've done wet on dry on top, so for the details. So the painting was left to fully dry and then I put the details in. Whereas this painting, I did the whole thing wet in wet. So I kept adding watercolor as the water was kind of drying a little bit, and you can keep kind of adding it up to a point. And so hopefully you can see there, one is quite soft and one has those more focused details. And then in this one here, some of these were sort of older and I've worked back on top of, but this one here was again just in the underpainting state, and I left the left side and still in the soft sort of watercolory wet in wet technique, and then I did the right side with the kind of wet on dry detailing on top of that. I love the antique Orbison rugs, and so these paintings were inspired by those, and I feel like sometimes the rugs you know, if the sun's been coming in, some of the rug will be kind of damaged, or so yeah, that's why I left the kind of one side more softened, as if the sun had been coming through the window. So I don't often do kind of paintings on paper. I like to work in my sketchbooks until I have an idea of kind of what I want to paint. And even like these are little paintings that I was kind of thinking about. And I also will keep one or two from if I release like a collection. But these roses were some of the first ones that I really loved. And you can see, like, when I talk about my, if I just stayed in my own colour palette, it would be like this kind of soft pink and the sparkles. But yeah, and then this was like the first iris that I did. So some of these are from, I think, like 2018, 2019. This was a climbing mountain series that I did maybe a year or two ago. Let's see. Yeah, I really enjoy kind of all these different subjects as well. So this one was when I first, like, I'd been swatching colours, I'd been mixing colours, and I really wanted to sit down and kind of try all these techniques and try and put them together. So I used a Ted Baker rain boot, and I really loved like the artwork on it. So I wanted to see how all those techniques would combine into a painting. Again, this little mini rug with the wet in wet, and that kind of softens into everything like the way a rug kind of does. This was the Constant Pearl series, and I really enjoyed the looseness that I got from this one, but I feel like, because it's kind of a tricky balance, and it is hard to figure that out. This was a shoe and kind of some other shoes I had been working on, and this is a French building. I want to work more on the windows, and then this one here was from a chandelier that I saw on a house tour. And the interesting thing about this is, at the time I wasn't sure exactly where to stop. So I stopped because I wanted to think a little bit more about it. Now I can see, like, it just needs a few little bits of like darker contrast in there, just a little bit to show that detailing, but at the time I wasn't sure, so I think that's always a good place to stop. So what does this all mean when you think about and talk about these techniques? How do you actually paint? We are going to look through these 3 books I've been really enjoying. I know I just did a favourite book, a video, but these 3 I've been really enjoying in the new year. And we're going to look through these, maybe a couple of others, but I want to talk through some of the paintings and some of the techniques that are used in these books. Hopefully go back to basics a little bit to go forward and kind of troubleshoot some of the different things that might be, struggling with or holding us back. So we're going to start with this Van Gogh one, which is so beautiful. This is actually on sale at the minute on Amazon for $20. So yeah, but I really love this painting. You can see like just the light and the detailing. He also uses really thick impasto paint, which obviously watercolor is the opposite of this. We don't build up the medium, we really rely on that light and the transparency. But look at like his his horizontal strokes there in the sky. It's so magical. The way he builds up color here is so delicious. But I wanted to start with this because I feel like sometimes and the other 2 books are watercolor, but this is obviously oil paint. But I wanted to start with this because sometimes we might see something in oil paints or see something that's more solid and we wonder how to translate that into watercolors. I think that can often be one of the biggest hurdles, is kind of learning the difference in the way that will work. So these, we're gonna start in this sketchbook. So this is the Manufactus sketchbook, and I'll link this below. This again has beautiful Amalfi cotton paper in it, and we're going to flip to the back and kind of find a nice page. I like to always flip to the back to do studies, color swatches, color mixes. So first of all, I'm going to just put 4 dots kind of for the corners of the box, and we're just going to freehand in 3 boxes here. So you can tape these up if you like. You can use a ruler. I am just going to kind of eyeball it. I always like the idea of using tape or a ruler, but yeah, it's just always quicker to do it this way. So what we're going to do are a few color studies, little vignettes, little landscape vignettes to look at the different techniques and how to apply them. So we're looking at this beautiful painting, Green Wheat Fields, in, I think he painted in 1890. So first of all, just compositionally, he's got these beautiful undulations. He's got this sort of darker patch in the front, and then these 2 vertical grasses, and then these kind of swirling clouds. You can also see, and those horizontal stripes again, but and the kind of the circles that he's putting everywhere. These nice, almost calligraphic sort of C's. So I grabbed out this little plein air palette. This is one I take outside because I feel like A, we're doing kind of landscapes that you could do on location, and B, it has a lot of the colours that he's using in this painting already mixed, you know. So, but I will list these colours below. Some of these I've made, but I will give you like an equivalent of what you can mix, or like what might be available out there as well. So you can see, to start, I always put a little bit of water on my colours. I don't spray it because I don't want the palette to rust. And then we're going to start with wet on wet. So we're wetting the paper here. You can use a bigger brush if you like. I am just coating this with a generous coat of water, and then I'm starting as he did, like about 2/3 up. The horizon line was quite high on this painting, and I'm starting with that kind of really nice downward hill. In watercolor we work from light to dark, so I'm starting with the lightest greens that I can see. Again, I'm putting in this nice line across there, and then I'm moving up to like a more mid-tone green and putting that kind of in that area where you could see the sort of darker values. I'm just starting with the lightest darker value. And then with all these greens, he adds these beautiful kind of minty colours and these periwinkle colours. So this would be similar to either like a Prussian green with, or a phthalo green with a lot of white, or like a viridian with a lot of white, something like that. And then he puts in little bits and flecks of yellow. It just brings the painting together so beautifully. And then again, these little flecks of periwinkle. He uses this palette quite a bit. I'm not sure if this is like just a cobalt blue with white, but it's just such a beautifully visual, peaceful combination as well. Then he's got some like a dark, maybe indigo. I'm using indigo, but it could be some sort of a dark blue that he mixes with the greens, and you can see kind of the dark blue. But again, like I'm just coming in with these kind of C shapes, huckleberry. I'm coming in with like these C shapes, and I'm not trying to mimic his brush strokes exactly. I'm just kind of looking at it as a rough estimate of different types of things that he did. Doing a small exercise like this fairly quickly will help you, first of all, to start gauging compositionally proportions, like where things are, how large things are, where to put sort of the lights and the darks. And then we've got these vertical grasses, which just add this element of it's kind of excitement to the painting. It adds this extra dimensional sort of quality. Then you can see there that we have pooling happening up the top. I'm going to leave that to show you. You could either mop it up, but I'm going to show you what happens if you leave kind of puddles of water like that on your painting. You'll see that we'll end up with a bloom, which is something you can and cannot. I don't mind it sometimes, and sometimes you don't want it on your painting. So you just want to be aware of it and know how to work that. Then you can see I'm also coming back in with the same colours and kind of intensifying those marks as they get fuzzy and they kind of soften into the water. This top right is kind of dry, so we go back in a minute and put some more water on there, but I just kind of continue on it in the sky here, putting this periwinkle colour in. Okay, so in our last one we did just wet in wet, and we're going to let that dry. In this one we're going to do wet on dry, which is another really important technique, and these two techniques kind of make up the basis of a lot of watercolor painting. So you can see that I didn't wet the paper. There's no wet paint on the paper, and I'm just going in with my wet medium on the dry paper and just seeing kind of how that will work. And so you can see with the first one that a lot of the detail we put in went fuzzy, and you can see with this one that because the paper's dry, it is holding the detail. So we do have that, but what we're missing is kind of depth and the beautiful softened quality that watercolor can provide us. So what we're going to do is combine these two techniques, and this is kind of where the magic happens with watercolor. And sometimes if the watercolor isn't turning out right, it could be because you're just using one or the other of those techniques, and it might need to be built up a little bit more or something like that. So the first thing that I did in this one is I used less water on the paper. So I really saturated the paper in the first one, and I think a lot of times we're told to really saturate the paper, but for this purpose I don't need that much water. My paper's quite thin as well, so if you had thicker paper you could put more on, but you can see already with less water the watercolor is holding a little bit more of that detail. Okay, so you can see what our bloom did before. So again, I'm just going back in. This is still wet, and I am just adding those last kind of details. I'm going to leave off those vertical grasses because in the wet on dry one they dried really well. So we'll leave those off until our next layer. And then we wait. So the really important thing about glazing and adding more layers on top is that you've got to wait until the bottom layer or the underlayer is completely dry. So I often will work on something else on the page, like an emblem, or have a different sketchbook there that you can work on. And then we just go in, and as we did the wet on dry, we're now using that same process, but we're going back over these softened marks with some more structured marks. And I'm not exactly sure if you can see it on camera, but what it does is it creates a real depth and like a volume within the painting. So where maybe one or the other technique hasn't worked well for you, combining those together might be the key that you're looking for. And there are lots of moving parts to watercolor, so we are going to talk about those in the next few videos. And if you have any specific questions, let me know, and I will try and incorporate those into like the right video. But you can see how beautiful his painting is. The sort of this sensitivity to the light, the atmosphere, the depth, the visual sort of just the visual appeal and delight as well. Okay, but we're going to simplify this even further, and we're going to look. I had this little spare piece of paper, and I think the top mark I made, I was just kind of getting some of the colour off my brush. And then I thought that sort of looks a little bit like a cloud, and then with another stroke I could make kind of a very simplified landscape. And I thought this would be an interesting project to start the year and get sort of used to watercolour in a way. So you can see I made 4 boxes there, and I'm going around the border with one of my favourite mixes, which is Potter's Pink and Pearl White. So yep, and I'm adding quite a lot of water, so it's quite a softened version of that mix. But last year we did the sort of more technical drawing to start the year off, so I'll link those videos below. And then the year before that we did colour, like a colour a day kind of thing. And this year I thought it would be nice to just work on watercolour, what it can do, what are the challenges, what are the strengths. And one of the ways to find that out is just to use the paints. So we're going to just pair everything back to kind of this 2-stroke landscape. And what I mean by that, in the beginning I was thinking maybe to just literally do 2 strokes, but after I had been painting those Van Goghs, there was still a lot of colour and movement left in my brush. So I thought, I'm not limiting myself to just 2 strokes and 2 colours. I want to just kind of limit myself to maybe 2 things, so a cloud and a piece of land, or a sky and a piece of land sort of thing. So we're simplifying a landscape, especially in the beginning of the year when we're quite tired, maybe run down in the middle of winter, but still trying to focus on something and think about something with painting each day. So I'm thinking about colours. I mixed the peach pop with the pearl white on the top, and on the bottom I'm mixing the pink, like Potter's Pink, with like Sedona or like a burnt sienna, and I mix a little bit of magenta in. But again, you can see I was kind of rolling my brush, and one of the things that we're doing here is looking at how much even water or pigment, when we load up our brush, how much is on there. All these types of little exercises will help you to become more familiar with your paints, what they can do, how they mix, how they sit on the paper. You might want to sort of use a few different sketchbooks, a few different brushes, and you know, even do the same colours on different papers or with different brushes to see how those work. This is really for you to get to know and understand more about watercolour. So however you can kind of tweak this exercise in the way that would be helpful for you, yeah. So you can see in this one, I started with the blue sky and then I just liked that mark, so I just left that. I did a cloud. I'm coming back in with sort of a different configuration of the mountains at the bottom with the landscape portion. So even just thinking about making little changes, and again, these are the types of it's kind of the motion of your brush, and you know, you could see in Van Gogh's work how he's creating those beautiful lines in the hills, and just doing small things like this to kind of think about how you like to create those marks, what it would look like if you did this or this. You can see that I'm adding in little other bits of my neutrals into this hillside because it is winter here at the minute, so we do get like a lot of this kind of brown color. And again, I'm working from the lightest color of the hillside to the darkest shadows, just in very small ways. So a project like this, I usually like to spend a month, so like I'll do one of these each day, and then on this one I decided to actually finish the sky how I was thinking of in the you know, previous one. But so much of watercolor is kind of getting to learn the paper that you like, the brush that you like, how the colors interact, how much kind of pigment you need on your brush, how much water. And again, we'll go into like some exercises in water control and things like that, but don't underestimate how valuable these small exercises can be in really forwarding your skill. You can see like the colors in that one were very inspired by what we just painted, the soft blues, the soft greens. I put a little bit of that green gold in the hillside, and yeah, then like I did one that I would sort of more do, which is like the very sort of blush colored sky, the really sort of soft granular mountain, and then a little bit of a bright sunrise. So we are finishing up the video, and I wanted to get this out to you. Hopefully I can get it out before the storm hits. Winter storm Fern's on its way, and yeah, I don't know if we'll like lose Wi-Fi, you know, internet or anything like that. So let's see. You can see like here's some other papers that I have ready to go. So some I might do in the sketchbook, some I might do on the papers. And you know, this is a good place to start for a week or two, and then we will build on these little landscapes. We'll add some other elements as we talk about those in the next videos. And we talked a lot in this video about doing wet on wet and then adding the wet on dry over the top of that. But you can also do it the opposite way and have, so this little tree, Christmas tree I'm working on, I did the wet on dry first, and then we'll do wet on wet around that. So that's also another option. So once you kind of know these different techniques, you can mix and match how you put those together. Anyway, I will see you guys hopefully soon. Be safe. Let me know if you are affected by the storm as well. This is, yeah, we'll see how it goes. I will see you guys soon. Be safe. Bye.